Well, hello and welcome. Gary Beck, naturopath from Maximum Wellbeing. Talking today a little bit about stress and your immune system. Our immune system is fundamental to obviously our ongoing health and well-being, and of course in recent times with much concern about viruses and social distancing, etc., I felt it was appropriate just to talk a little bit about what's going on with your immune system, and in particular in relation to stress in its different forms. So the first thing is to understand that, of course, stress is a word that's used a lot these days, and the reality is that not many people truly understand what stress is, where it comes from, and importantly, what it actually does. So when we're wanting to understand our health and what's important, it's critical we learn about stress in all its different forms and understand the total stress load is what will determine whether or not we or our body is actually under stress. So firstly, stress comes in many different shapes and forms, and it could be associated with exposure to pathogens, bacteria or parasites or virus or fungi could all be stressors. We could be stressed from free radical damage as a result of some really hard physical exercise. We can also be stressed from toxins that may be present in our food, in the air, or in our water. And we may have stress from emotional turmoil in our personal relationships. We could have physiological stress from physically working hard each day, and we could, of course, have psychological stress from our work in another fashion. So, regards to the stress, the response in the body is exactly the same. We have our adrenals respond, stress hormones are produced, and everything has to try and balance as a result of that. So, as I said, we must consider our overall stress burden to know really what is going to be going on in the body. There is a difference between chronic and acute stressors, so there will be a different effect in the body. And this is understood when we look at the adaptation process or the depletion of stress hormones over time when stress is very prolonged. And there are studies that confirm the long-term negative effect. As an example, here's one example. A group that was followed for a period of time showed that those that experienced a large number of traumatic or stressful events over a period of 12 months had a far greater likelihood of developing a number of upper respiratory illnesses. And this is not uncommon. There's actually quite a number of studies that show similar things with not only upper respiratory illnesses but a whole range of different things. So the stress hormones in fact alter both the distribution of and the functionality of our white blood cells. Our white blood cells, those guys there that are out to try and keep invaders under control. And another thing to consider is the association between stress and our behavior. And it's kind of a bi-directional thing. Certain behaviors may result in stress components, and certain stresses may result in particular behaviors. So, and to illustrate that, consider, you've had a really long day or a long week at work. You've worked physically hard. You're exhausted after a long stressful period, whether it's a day or a week, and you come home, and it can sometimes be quite difficult to maintain the motivation to create a healthy meal, prepare a healthy meal, for example. It may be much easier to simply grab a bag of chips or resort to an alcoholic drink or a bar of chocolate or whatever it may be. Far more likely or far easier in some situations to do that than to prepare a healthy salad or eat a carrot. So there are behaviours that will be exacerbated by stress, and as I say, it's kind of a bi-directional thing. It can be a double-edged sword. We also need to understand that stress will cause a shift in our overall immune response, and there's two types of activation. So one is the normal activation of our immune system to deal with invaders or pathogens or whatever that may be. But there's also a potential for an overactivation, which is a slightly different part of our immune system that is associated with allergies and autoimmune conditions. So obviously, if we are burdened in some ways, that particular component, so where we're more reactive to foods, more allergies, more potential of autoimmune conditions, this can be associated with stress as well. So yes, the whole sort of reactivity to not only foods but other things out in the environment need to be considered. And we've also seen that pure psychological stress on its own is known to be able to cause both a dysfunction or disarrangement of the immune system. And this is all about perception to a degree. The way that we perceive things is an important factor. Now, our social situation has a profound effect on the immune system as well. And the science does show that social isolation, in fact, can actually induce what is, in a sense, an inflammatory response in the system. So as well as it creating inflammation, we also see that inflammation is associated with a suppression or downregulation of typical antiviral immunity. On the flip side of this is the fact that positive experiences with others and social connection can actually reverse that effect. So it can have an anti-inflammatory effect and also improve our overall immunity. And this has been confirmed when we look at research associated with those that live in the so-called blue zones. And it's quite clear that fewer social relationships or connections for a person, so a person that has less social connections, less social interaction, will actually have a shorter life expectancy. And what also shows in that research is that the people with those fewer connections will experience more significant impact when trying to deal with infectious diseases. So, these are really important things to understand fully, particularly in this time of social distancing and limitations on our ability to do what is so natural and so important for us to do. And I just want to mention that tiny little gland in our brain, that gland known as the pineal gland. So this is a really important contributor to both our immune system and our endocrine system, our hormone system. People often talk about the pineal gland and associate that with the production of melatonin, which is certainly important, and it does do. But the pineal gland, in fact, produces over 20 different hormones. So although it's very small, it's a really key player. And the pineal gland is historically considered as the bridge between our material and our spiritual world. And it connects us as an organism. It connects our body to the environment. And it does that via the rhythm of night and day, or light and dark, and also magnetic fields. And I know in the research that I've done, we see science that shows that a high level of exposure to a variety of magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields, will have a dulling effect on the ability of the pineal gland to produce not only melatonin but other hormones. So there are many studies showing an association between a disruption in that circadian rhythm and an immune dysregulation. So it's quite clear that this is a key player. We just need to look at workers, for example, shift workers, particularly those that are working under lights at nighttime, and those that are perhaps more at risk are the ones that are working on rotating shifts. It's clear that people that work on rotating shifts over long periods of time have a greater risk of developing cancer. It's in the literature. It's not a maybe. It is what happens. So to summarize, I just want you to understand that the overall stress burden from all sources must be understood. And where possible, it's beneficial to not only reduce the stresses that we're exposed to, but of course manage them effectively. So the total stress load and our own perception of different types of stress in our lives is the real important key. How we perceive things, what we think, because what we think is happening or how stressful something is will actually ensure that it is certainly stressful. If we have a far more easygoing attitude and don't take on so many things personally, then of course that's going to be a positive for us and for our immune system. So look at ways to nourish your whole body. Look at things that will actually help to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, our parasympathetic system in general, and find the things that bring you joy or are pleasurable. The more of these things that we can bring into our days, the better off our immune system is going to be, the better off we're going to be, and of course we're going to feel better and function better if we're able to have more joy in our days. Stress does kill. Don't let it destroy you. Understand it, reduce it, manage it, and live a much better, happier, healthier life. I hope you found this helpful. Gary Beck from Maximum Wellbeing, and I'll look forward to speaking to you sometime soon. Bye for now.